Welcome to the Pitching Command Show, brought to you by Command Trakker, the smart target that MLB and D1 teams rely upon to measure and train command. Many throw hard, but few command. Visit commandtrakker.com. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Joining today's podcast is my friend Peter Gammons, the legendary award-winning Hall of Fame sports writer, media personality, and musician. Welcome, Peter. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
You began your journalism career at Boston Globe when you covered the Red Sox for most of the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You were also the lead baseball columnist in Sports Illustrated, as well as writing for a column in Sporting News. You then joined ESPN as a baseball analyst in 1988 and appeared regularly on Baseball Tonight and also made appearances on SportsCenter. And in 2009, you left ESPN and joined the MLB Network. You were voted the National Sportswriter of the Year 3 times by the National Sportscasters and Sportswriters Association. Wow, your career in baseball is amazing. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. It was great it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. Baseball is clearly my first love. I loved covering high school and college basketball when I started, and things like that. But baseball was always the most fun. And I was lucky because, there weren't restrictions on the clubhouse the way there are today. And on the road, I would go out early, like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would play pepper. I would shag for the Red Sox hitters that wanted to hit early.
That's awesome.
And I learned a lot. I think the main thing, other than learning how players think, it was just how difficult the game is to play. It looks so easy, but it's really difficult. And those guys, I once said to Jim Rice, you didn't play any harder in high school than I did, but the talent level, I said to him, you were a high school All-American football player in Anderson, South Carolina. You were a high school All-American baseball player, a number 1 draft choice, finished runner-up for Rookie of the Year and MVP of Rookie of the Year. And so I'll guarantee you didn't play any harder in high school than I did. I just sunk. And it is really tough. It's very difficult. There's no such thing as a guy who plays in the big leagues who's a stiff or something. I'm sorry.
No.
You get there and it's remarkable. And when guys can make it to make them way out of the Hall of Fame ballot, they get 10 years in the big leagues. That's an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah.
My friend Steve Cishek, he couldn't even make all Barnstable County on Cape Cod in high school, pitching for Falmouth High School. He played 13 years in the major leagues. He had a 298 earned run average in those 13 years as a relief pitcher. It's a really tremendous career. And when I was going into, it was about a year ago, the year before he retired, I said to him, Steve, your career has been it's been a great career. And he didn't even realize it. Now, that's partly because he's such a modest person. But still, I don't think enough is made of, there are 2 things that there isn't enough made of posting, being in the lineup every day, being available, or more important, being available every day. And secondly, 10 years is a remarkable accomplishment. But going out there and being available to play every day is really incredible.
Yeah, Dan DeQuette was saying that the best ability is availability.
Yes.
I like the way I said that. I think also I've noticed our mutual friend Emo, I was talking to him yesterday about this, and I said, it's funny. Everyone that you introduced me to, I hit it off like I could just hang out and have a beer and talk baseball with. I said, why is that? It's because they're all down to earth baseball guys. So like, there's a lot of guys like that in baseball who are just good guys that enjoy the game. You know,
Oh,
they don't have
absolutely.
they don't have egos or anything.
I think that the most important thing, and a good friend of mine with the Dodgers, is one of the best scouts they have, says that on every scouting report, there should be at the beginning, there should be a section that says how much does this person love to play,
Yeah,
and it's really important. I mean, we see guys that get burned out a little bit, and they go from 78 RPM to 33 RPM, or they just I mean, that there are certain guys that like the money better than they like baseball.
no, but I think the thing I'm talking about is like you and I are just talking like guys that hanging out. I was talking for the first time with Billy Wagner yesterday on the phone, and just a nice, great guy. And here I'm thinking this is one of the best closers of all time. Talking to me, he knows nothing about me, like treating me like a regular person. And I thought that's a really great quality.
Well, Billy's a remarkable guy. I'll never forget. 1992 was the first time I ever saw him pitch. He was pitching for Brewster in the Cape Cod League, and um, that was 30 years ago. He's still the best pitcher that I've ever seen pitch on the Cape, and it was. I mean, he had such leg drive. He had a great, a little bit of a funky delivery. He had the arm angle. I mean, he was only 5'9". His arm angle was a little bit odd. And actually his rising fastball was
Yeah,
about
way
20
ahead of
years,
its time. Yeah.
20 years in front of his time. But he was truly great. And he was inducted into the Cape League Hall of Fame last year, but he wasn't there. He was sick. So I had to play Billy Wagner uh, in the ceremony, but proud
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he broke his arm and then learned how to throw left-handed and
Oh yeah,
became a Hall of Fame caliber closer throwing with the wrong arm. That's amazing.
highest strikeouts per 9 innings of any pitcher in history.
Yeah. A lot of shows, people always talk about high velocity. And on this show, we kind of try to talk it, but we think you need high velocity. But we try to talk about other things you need as a pitcher to succeed, like control, command, sequencing, movement, changing speeds, mental training, and character. I wanted to know of those kind of things, how have you seen the emphasis on command change over the years? It seems that it's kind of gone to the wayside.
I think it has because uh, velocity velocity sells. Velocity for about 10 years, um, people judged success by velocity, and it just simply isn't so. It sometimes is very important. 99 is 99, but at the same time, um,
Yeah, because
guys now have learned to hit velocity, but
right.
it's it's still, if it's 2-0, I mean, it's still not it's still not great. You can throw 100, but you might get hit, and it's um now this is beyond um how much damage has been done to so many people by trying to throw. Just they're trained to throw for velocity. I mean, there's a place where a lot of guys go to add velocity, and a friend of mine, another scout who was really good on pitching, he pitched 10 years in professional baseball. He said that they sound they all cheer and sound a little siren if a guy hit 100. Didn't matter if it went like 8 feet over the catcher's head. I mean, and that was his point. That that's not pitching, and there's so much of the throwing with heavy balls, doing all that stuff, that you end up. It's like guys are going out there doing lifting heavy weights, and that's not what gets guys out. I mean,
Well, like Emo says, what is your useful velocity? Meaning that it's good if you can throw hard. It's a goal you want to try to achieve, but you have to have a level of at least control with movement. You have to be able to at least change speeds. I think too much emphasis is put on only one thing, like velocity, and without working on changing speeds or getting movement uh, and command, all those things together, you're not a pitcher, like you said. You know?
well, there's so much that goes into pitching. I mean,
Yeah.
I there's too much of the showcase stuff. I mean, oh well, the best pitcher there hit 103 times. Well, that didn't have anything to do with pitching.
Yeah.
It had to do with throwing. I mean, as one
Yeah.
pitching coach likes to say, we've trained um, an entire generation of pitchers with
To be
the
leaders.
essence of being they're learning to pitch by deadlifting. And they wonder why they're all having Tommy John surgery at 22 years old.
Mhm. Did you see that 14th pitch plate appearance by Alex Thomas in Game 2 of the NLDS, the
Oh yeah.
Dodgers and Diamondbacks? That's the kind of point I'm getting at in the show is that without command, without proper movement, without sequencing, changing speeds, you could throw really hard, but you can't put a guy away. And the job of a pitcher is to get outs without giving up runs. You know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. Um, Once he got command, Randy Johnson didn't throw any harder in 1998, 9, 20, 21, but he had great command. He learned to pitch and he would change speeds. He had the really good slider. Um, and he
Nolan
went
Ryan
from
was
being
like
a
that too,
really
right?
good he went from being a really good pitcher, which he became in 95 when he really pitched, was a key pitcher on the Mariners and got them uh, got them helped get them past the Yankees, and they had that great series with Cleveland, and it was it there was just a lot that went into it, and Chris Sale, um, he changed dramatically. I still think if his shoulder holds up, he could be a very effective 180 inning pitcher next year because he's now gotten the changeup. So his changeup is so good, um, and his command of his fastball is so good. It's just his shoulder didn't hold up this year. I don't know if it will, but with another winter to train properly, you never know. I think he could come back and he can win with the stuff he had. It's just he couldn't always have it because it just at this point in his career at 38, he gets his shoulder gets tired. But another
Yeah.
winter of training, he might, will he be prime Randy Johnson? No, but he's such a competitor and he understands pitching so well. He could end up again throwing 180 innings and winning, 16 games.
Wow, that would be amazing. There was another one that I wanted to see what you thought about was the ALDS Rangers Orioles game. You had Corey Seager walk 5 times to set an NL record for the most walks in a postseason game. And the Rangers had 11 walks that game to set an ALDS record. To me, that's pointed to a real lack of control or being afraid, not throwing in the zone. What was your take on that?
I think it was. I thought the Orioles were very patient, um, and they did a good job. But I just, you could the fastball. Kurt Schilling in his prime was one of the really great fastball pitchers. I mean, in '98 through 2001, when the Diamondbacks finally won the World Series. I mean, ask Buck Showalter. he wouldn't throw anything with a fastball until the seventh inning. And I remember
Wow.
talking to him about it because he was telling me at some length when he was young, he was a fanatic about throw. And I think it was his grandparents' house. There was a fence there, and he would try to hit everything absolutely. He had he took magic marker, chalk, and marked it out on this wall, and he would throw the strikes to that. And by the time that all he ever did was throw fastball, pump fastball. But by the time when he really started to get his command in the late, about 1990, well, he had it in 93 when, remember, the Phillies lost 15-14 in game 5 or 4 of the playoffs in Philadelphia. And the next night he went out and threw a 3-0 shutout and got them back to, at least they went back to Toronto, and theirs where the home run beat them. But I mean, Schilling had the command. He was hurt a couple of years, but those 4 years through 2001 when they won the World Series, he was unbelievable, and it was very simple. Seventh inning, he'd start to throw a few sliders and some cutters, and also throw the split. And then he was unhittable. He could finish off the last 3 innings. He was so strong. His delivery was so good, and his command was so good. But he used to say to me, Peter, you once wrote this, and I picked it up, but you should remember this, that you always said that I had 6 different fastballs. I just could throw them all to 6 different spots, and he would be up and in, down and away, and that's a big deal.
Well, you can take a fastball and you could throw it. Could be a sinker, it could be a runner, it could be a rise ball, it could be cutting.
Oh yeah.
So like Rivera, he would throw his cut fastball, but there would be some regular four seams in there too, and so the batters didn't know which way it's going.
Oh yeah. And I mean, in Schilling, when he went over to the Red Sox, the thing that was so great, that made him so great in his career, and I thoroughly believe it belongs in the Hall of Fame, as does Randy Johnson. 2004, when he won at least one game in each of the 3 series for the Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't throwing 98 anymore. He was probably throwing 95, 96 at times, but his command was so good that, I mean, he was always ahead in the count. And then 2007, it was actually comical because he had lost his velocity at that point with the Red Sox. He still went out and won a game in each one of the playoff series, and which meant he did it 3 times in his career for Arizona and twice for Boston. But there were times when he was throwing 85 miles an hour, and Theo Epstein the radar gun guys who were Red Sox employees who sat down in like the 5th row. They were ordered at least once when he would be at 85 to 88. They would put up 92 miles an hour because Theo knew that don't let him lose his confidence. Let him be bold as can be. And Schilling had the 2 things. He had the great command. He could throw 88 to 90 miles an hour and still have perfect control. And also, he could do what very few pitchers are ever taught to do. They're taught to pitch for the radar gun, but they're not taught to study hitters' swings. Rick Maddox knew. I mean, Maddox used to give the sign to Eddie Perez. I mean, he would, but I remember doing a thing for ESPN with the 2 of them about what they did together with the Braves. And Perez, I would sit in the middle, and he would give me the sign. And and also he had to have the ball back in 2 seconds because he wanted to control the tempo of the
That's
at-bat.
important.
And it was really funny because Maddox admitted, well, I had different ways to sign. I mean, For changeup, I used to like pretend to pick my nose. He would sometimes tug at his cap, but he would know what he was going to throw while the throw, what the pitch he was going to throw by the throw that was coming back to the mound. And everybody kind of knew. I mean, Walt Weiss, whoever was the shortstop, would know, oh, okay, this is what's coming. And it was, yeah, I mean, it was not Kurt Schilling, the Kurt Schilling that was the MVP of the 2001 World Series. It was the Kurt Schilling who just had the great desire to win for his team. And
Oh,
to go
that's important.
3 times in 6 years and win in the division series, the championship series, and the World Series is incredible. Particularly 2 of those times he was hurt, but he could figure out how to get through it. I mean, once they stitched up his ankle in 2004, Jason Varitek knew exactly that he was going to win. And, I mean, he and Varitek are perfect. Varitek was the master of being able to know what a take or a swing meant, what the hitter tried to do. Same thing, and they were on the same page all the time. And it was absolutely amazing. Brett Boone told me a great story. I was doing a podcast with him last winter, and he said that year that we won 116 games, pretty remarkable year, most wins of any team ever in the regular season. He said we were completely psyched out by Jason Varitek. It wasn't about one of my framing statistics. They weren't about charting the game before the game was played. I mean, I'm sorry, but Barrios didn't have to come out of the game, but because of a pre-game script on how many pitches he was going to throw. Some of the 3 times around the order, but it doesn't apply to everybody. It applies to some. Now,
but in order for that to work, you have to have command. Because if you can read the batter, that's a great skill. It's critical. But the pitcher has to be able to have command to the location that's required based upon what they saw, right?
Oh, absolutely. But there's a good example. Mike King of the Yankees was an up-and-coming starting pitcher in the Yankee organization. His fastball had not, it was still like 88 to 90 as he was when he was in college. Mm-hmm. They trade him, and he goes to Miami, and they didn't think anything of him. He doesn't throw hard, because they were after they switched general managers and pro scouting director, and made the trades and got them Alcantara, from the Diamondbacks, and also Lopez. They got those 3 guys in 2 deals that were widely criticized by the group that had been brought in from New York. They were crazy on radar guns, so they gave Mike King. Mike King, under some programs and working on a slider, got to be a dominant relief pitcher, but he was not comfortable warming up and getting up and down and up all that and just training for velocity. He went back to starting the second half of this year, was the Yankees' second best pitcher to the best pitcher in the league, Garrett Cole. He went and back and started, I think it was about 10 games. Well, he maintained his velocity, but the funny thing is, like, a lot of people say, well, he'll have to adhere to just going twice around the order. Well, hitters were 6 for 8. 1 for 16 with, I think it was 12 strikeouts or 2 walks against his fastball from the 3rd time around on. I mean, it was just a matter of his learning to pitch, sort of compensating it and wanting to throw hard, but not overdoing it as he was doing in the bullpen.
Well, that's like you said, learning to pitch, because it's a dance out there with the batter. You can have a advanced scouting report that tells you some good information, but there's no better advanced scouting report as watching the batter react to your pitch, where he hit it, where he fouled it, what he took, what he didn't take. You know what I mean?
Oh
All
yeah,
those
and
things tell
also
you.
just understanding if you watch a guy's take or a check swing or whatever, you have an idea of where it's going. 1986, Tom Seaver was traded to the Red Sox in June. And I've always said Tom Seaver's on the Red Sox, and he's starting those two games, not Oil Can Boyd. The Red Sox would have won that World Series. He wasn't going to lose at Shea Stadium against the Mets to start with, but he got hurt with 2 weeks to go in the season, couldn't pitch again. But there was a time, once in a while, John McNamara, the manager, would allow, if it was the end of the road trip, he'd let Tom go home for a day or two to Connecticut. And it was only a 3-hour drive to Fenway Park. So Roger pitched on a Sunday in Texas, and they had a left-handed hitting catcher. And when he came up against Clemens, it was 1-0 Red Sox. I think it was the 4th inning. And Rich Gedman, the catcher, explained to Roger he had no scouting report on him. Didn't know who he was. So Roger, so okay, I'll bury him inside with a fastball. Well, he bailed and wailed, just guessing. That's what Roger would do. Hit a ball down the right field line, hit the foul pole. Rangers ended up winning the game 2-1. And the Red Sox were, of course, in a pennant race. So the next day, I used to love to go down that corner of the clubhouse. There was Clemens, there was Bruce Hurst, there was Seaver. And in comes Seaver, goes up to Roger. What were you thinking? I mean, that was really dumb. And Roger, he idolized Seaver. So, I just thought maybe I could throw a fastball and foul it off or swing and miss. And said, no, you should throw a fastball up and away and just see what he does, what his body language is. So you have an idea of that's what he's going to do. And so Roger never again threw a first pitch fastball inside in the rest of his career. And that's 355 wins. So,
Wow.
but he, I mean, he still talks about it to this day. And it was having that great veteran. I mean, in my mind, one of the handful of greatest pitchers who ever lived, telling him that Roger really idolizing the great pitchers. And it was, that was pitching. That was knowing how to, okay, I need to find out what this guy's thinking. That was what he could do because both of their fastballs were so intimidating and so hard. And it was just, one of those things that.
Well, that's a great example of you can have a good fastball, but if you throw it in the wrong location, you don't get a good result. So it goes to command again,
Oh,
at least.
absolutely. He's still remembering it, which is pretty cool.
I have a saying that I say that I stole from somebody. I don't know where it came from. Was that home runs are mostly thrown, not hit.
I think that could be true.
I don't know where I heard it from. I didn't make it up, but I can't claim it. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that I feel real strongly about. In 2019, I co-wrote an article for Baseball Prospectus with Sean O'Rourke, Jeff Long, and Harry Pavlidis, and it was called The Robozone. It's not as simple as you think. And the reason I wanted to write that article was I'm an engineer. I understand software, firmware, and the technology and the software behind all that. And I saw that a pure Robozone or ABS has too much room for finagling, meaning that you can write a backdoor to the software to make the strike zone smaller or wider during the game. You can do all sorts of things. So I figured, let's write an article and talk about some things that could go wrong with that. trying to head it off in the past so that maybe someone will read it and they'll implement some things to kind of make the game, fair, which is what we want. Now that won a Sabre Award in 2019. The other thing too is when I talk about in the article was that people would often complain about an umpire that the call was wrong, right? And I was saying that this just adds another layer because now you go from blaming the umpire to blaming the software. You'll say it was version 1.2 of the software that would have been a strike or not a strike, and that the hardware and the software that determine the ABS are hidden from view from us, the public. So we can't really know whether it's being used fairly or not because it's buried in a machine. I've seen the ABS applied in AAA, and I like that the challenge system they have there. But when I was talking to the Yankees director of pitching, he was describing how they were fiddling around raising and lowering the top of the zone in AAA this year. And that's the very thing that I was warning about in the article, is that we don't want to have people playing around with the zone. It should be defined so that everyone is playing on a fair playing field. And also that when they set the ABS for someone, the stringers are setting that. And it's like, well, who's checking the stringer that he picked the right zone for this guy? How have you found the RoboZone in AAA, and what do you think of that challenge system and kind of some of the things that I'm talking about being wary of?
I like the challenge system a lot. I think it really works. I think one of the things that I heard the most in AAA was that they couldn't get in the major leagues. The strike zones moved up so much. In the minor leagues, they're trying to teach their pitchers to throw the high fastballs and so forth. But the AAA, they couldn't get that high strike. And so some guys that had really performed at AA and really grown put themselves in a position of maybe being another guy called up. They had more trouble because their fastballs were average fastballs, a little bit above average, but in the major leagues, they get whacked. And they had trouble commanding it when they got to the big leagues because they had pitched for 3 months without being able to get that strike, so they had to bring the ball down.
Yeah, see, there was a follow-up article that I wrote in Baseball Prospectus. I call it the Universal Strike Zone. And what I had done is I took Army data where they had studied the thousands of men, where the shoulders were, the nape of the knee, the hip, everything. And so I determined what was the typical strike zone for a 6'2" batter. And then I made that target. Remember I was telling you about the command tracker target? I made that target match that zone. And I was proposing in that article that there ought to be a universal zone, so there's not all this playing around with the zone where it height, width, everything else. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, I think it has to be the same on every level. I think kids pitching in A ball or even in the complex leagues should have the strike zone. I mean, they should pound it for the 4 years or 5 years they have before they get to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And makes no sense to pitch one way in one league and so forth. I mean, I think they want to make things universal. I think you're going to see something this next season, that they made some changes in the baseball. Been a lot of complaints. I heard Dr. Meister from Dallas talking about how many guys that ended up straining their forearm because the balls. Now there's nothing they can't hold. They have to really work hard to get a proper grip on the ball because they don't have the artificial grip that you have in the Japanese balls, but they're a different size than the American balls. So I mean,
did you see that chalkless powder that Dan Duquette was promoting?
No.
It's a inorganic kind of chalkless powder that makes them tacky, and they've been testing it with MLB. And the idea was, instead of using mud that comes from the Hudson River here, that they would do a process that would be more uniform and consistent, so when guys get a ball, it's got a little tack to it, and it's always the same. I'm a big believer that everybody ought to have the same playing field. Like, for example, when my son comes off the mound in minor leagues, he's on TV, we're watching him, and the umpires check his hands, and my wife gets so upset. How could they think he's cheating? I said, you don't understand. He will never cheat, but now it's making it a level playing field for everybody. So I like that, because if you're going to compete, I want to compete fairly.
Oh yeah. No, I think they really care about it. I know that um, people from the medical profession are ready to they're going to join in and working on the balls and major MLB makes the baseballs. I mean, they own the company. So
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard quite a few complaints. Scherzer's made quite a few, and certain guys don't have big enough hands. It's very hard to stretch out enough to really grip the ball. And the other part of it, now that we're again having this deadlifting contest to train pitchers, they're throwing so hard, but they don't have command. The
Yeah.
biggest concern in baseball is somebody's going to get killed. And if somebody gets killed, then all the people that have sort of fluffed off the whole notions of the grip of the baseball, training only for velocity. Let's see them face this because it isn't right. And
Yeah.
there are companies that make a lot of money by training pitchers to throw harder and harder without command. And it's a very, very dangerous part of the sport. And
Well, also what I'm finding is that those guys, if they do get drafted, I have a lot of friends that are pitching coaches. They'll say they got guys throwing 98 get released all the time. So they're selling things to these kids that, okay, all you got to do is throw really hard and you'll get drafted. Well, maybe you might, but as Emo says, Emo has a great saying for everything. He says, velocity will get you there, but command will keep you there. So that they have a short-lived career if all they do is focus on throwing harder. They'll find, I noticed when guys get above AA, if you can't change speeds, if you can't some level of command, that's kind of like the stopping point. I see a lot of guys get dropped off at that level. Have you seen that kind of thing?
oh yeah, I mean, people say, well, this guy is boy, he had 5 years as a top prospect and doesn't make it. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
I've
and
also seen that as pitchers age, the good ones, the velocity drops, like you were saying earlier. But now they start developing better command, better sequencing, and better skills at reading batters. And they continue to have great careers.
effectiveness on the second and third pitch, um, the command, um, there's so much more to it than just saying, okay, I'm throwing 101 miles an hour. Now, I mean, if you're Duran in Minnesota, his ball moves so much, it's incredible. But to go further with they have to learn other things, but they're not being taught to um, or encouraged to do it on their own, to do it without pitch counts. You know, build up and pitch with learn to pitch with control. Learn to be able to put the ball in the inside part of the plate or up, or like Kurt Schilling, 6 different fastballs. I mean, that's what will get guys out. And the pure power is. I heard someone talking about, well, Nola doesn't throw that hard. Nola has a great fastball. It's just not 102 miles an hour.
Well, we saw the Phillies in the playoffs throw a guy that was throwing 92. It did awesome. So we know it's not all about velo. We know it's about movement, command, uh, pitch selection, reading batters, And on this show, that's kind of we're promoting when people watch it. It's like to have them realize that, well, you should amplify all of those things. you know.
Oh yeah,
Did you know Tim Wakefield?
yeah.
How do you think he developed his average control for his knuckleball? That had to be some,
Very good athlete to start with.
yeah,
I mean, he came up as a first baseman, third base, um, and he had great patience. You have to have tremendous patience because there are going to be nights when you're going to throw 8 straight pitches that are great pitches, where you thought they were going out of your hand, but they're balls, and you just have to be very patient about that. Guys are going to take a lot of pitches. It's a very, Phil Nico used to say to me, very, very difficult thing to do, a very difficult thing to do, is to continually throw strikes and not change when you get behind a hitter or if the game is tied. And you also have to worry a lot about not letting it have too much break when you have runners in scoring position. You don't want to have the ball. You don't want to throw 4 straight balls. You don't want to have balls bouncing in the dirt, getting by the catcher. So,
yeah. I can't imagine having good control with a knuckleball. It's got to be incredibly difficult.
oh, I think it is. I mean, one of the most amazing innings ever, though, was an inning when Wakefield came in when the Red Sox were losing, whatever it was, 19-8 in game three of the playoffs in 2004. They couldn't throw strikes, and Varitek couldn't catch them. Balls kept getting away from him, and he just had to go throw a lot of fastballs and curveballs and whatever else he threw that night. And he ends up getting out of the bases loaded, nobody out inning, and they win that game because showed up in the dugout with cleats on, signifying he's ready to go in and pitch. And so he pitched the time. Then the bullpen was rested. They won 3 straight with their bullpens and got to the World Series. I mean,
Well, that's what you were saying about earlier is that, the saying that is winners find a way, competitors find a way to dig down and get it done. Now, what do you think about like Pedro Martinez? He always had such a great strikeout to walk ratio, but he led the league in hit batters. What do you make of that?
um, sometimes his arm dropped. I mean, when he pitched inside, he couldn't always put it exactly where he wanted. But he was such a remarkable competitor and so great when it was all on the line that he loved that stage.
Yeah, there's a saying I use of his. I heard him say one time, and we use it in the target. In my target, we could define the areas you can hit to, but we also let you pick what we call the good miss areas. So if you're going to miss, you can miss over here. And his saying was that you execute your idea. So if you're going to go low and away, make sure you go really low and away. You know,
Yeah, I understand that, but he was just
a
I don't know.
competitor. He
Yeah,
was a
I mean,
competitor.
plus his changeup. I mean, you look, he had his one finger was so long, and you'd look at it, and the calluses on his finger would burn. I mean, there would be a little smoke coming up. There would be black spots on where the callus was, and
Wow.
his arm was so quick. He threw it was so quick, and his finger was so long. The ball stayed on that finger an extraordinarily long period of time, and that would give him the movement it had. It was incredible. Some nights when he was throwing really well, it was just and he also loved the moment. I mean, he was like, you know, I played music with Bernie Williams, and the night that we played with Buddy Guy in Chicago,
I
so
was
we
going
were
to
his.
ask you about that.
Oh, that was he walked. We finished our 6 songs. He's walking off the stage. We're finishing up playing, and he walks across the stage, gives me a hug, and says, "You know what? That's the greatest thing I've ever done." Now, He's got, 4 World Series rings, I believe.
I've been playing guitar for 40 years, over 40 years. And it's just one of those joyous things where I don't have to think. I just play. I get the feeling. It's you know what I'm talking about, right? You
Yeah.
don't think about anything. You're just playing. It's just a nice feeling.
But musicians, um, they live in the moment. They play in the moment. And David Cohn told me Bernie would go up, face Wakefield. He didn't like to hit from the left side. He hit right-handed against Wakefield, and he killed Wakefield. And it's baseball. A lot of times, it's playing in the moment. Pedro Martinez played in the moment like Little Richard or Stradivari. It's didn't matter what sort of music it was. He absolutely loved it, and he lived for it, and the crowds lived for it. I mean, it's when he came to Boston, um, it was as if fans saw things they'd never seen before. That was his first year there was the first year of the of interleague play. So the Braves are coming back to Boston. They left after the 52 season. Here they are back. And I told Bobby Cox, just wait when you see what happens between innings when the Braves are hitting, the noise level is much higher than when the Red Sox are hitting. And he said, well, not the home park like Fenway. I said, oh, yeah. After the game, he said, you're dead right. It was all about Pedro. I mean, the Red Sox had a good hitting team and everything, blah, blah. But it was about people wanted to see Pedro pitch. And the crowds were incredible when he went out there. And
And guys get pumped up like that. Like my son, when he was playing, it was some level in Pulaski, and there's nobody in Pulaski. Nice stadium, and they're playing. I think it was low A, and he said it's hard to get amped up because you don't feel anything's on the line. But then when you play in, like, let's say you play for the against the Mets in Staten Island, I mean in Coney Island.
yeah.
Well, those fans, it's loud. I've seen my son pitch there, and it's loud, but that pumps him up. It's like that kind of atmosphere gets you pumped up, and maybe Pedro fed off that.
Oh, I think pitchers do. I mean, they get the feeling and they're riding a wave in some ways, and it's just really fun.
Yeah. What would you say is the best piece of baseball pitching advice that you ever heard? I know it's a tough question because you've probably heard a
I think
lot.
if you're a youngster, it's all about just throwing strikes all the time and having that target up on a wall. I had it. I never threw hard enough to make any difference, but I had chalk on a brick wall that I used, and also a church wall that I threw against all the time as a kid. Um, and that's just it's about that. That's what you want to do. Have places marked on a wall where you want to hit them, and then hit them. I mean, and it might take 2 years, but if you can hit those spots, you can do it. I think it's very important too to have catchers that present you a very good target. When Johnny Bench once was demonstrating for me, we were talking about pitcher catcher relationships. And I told him what Brad Ausmus, who caught the 7th most games in baseball history, always said, which is the job of a catcher is to create conviction in the pitcher. And
Yeah,
so
Brad was on the show a couple of shows ago. We were talking something about it. Yeah.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But what happened was that Seaver and Bench created a scene for that in the lobby of the Otisaka Hotel in Cooperstown the day before the induction ceremony. And Bench got down, and he had such huge hands, but it was all about the presenting the target, and it wasn't about framing or anything like that. But they used they demonstrated something. That was Seaver's first start in June of 1977, after the Mets traded him to Cincinnati. And Seaver said he was a wreck because he was really afraid. He's coming over to a team that just won the World Series the last 2 years. He was really, am I going to screw it up, or what's going to happen? So he gets the first guy out, three or four pitches. But Tom said, I wasn't throwing very well. I mean, it wasn't anything that was going to last for 6 innings or something. So he gets ready to face the second batter. And Bench gets up from his haunches, walks across the room in this case, or out to the mound, gets right in Seaver's face and says, "Are you trying?" And of course, Seaver cracks up laughing because he knew, Bench knew Seaver was a very funny person. Bench is hysterical and very clever. And I believe in the end he had either a 1 or 2 hitter when the game was over. And it was just, he was returning Seaver to his natural pitching state, but he was also emphasizing that have fun and throw strikes with your best stuff. And it was just he knew, even though he hadn't played with him, he knew Seaver enough to know that was the way to approach it. Relax him. Could tell he was tense. And like, that's like the funniest thing probably that was ever said to Tom Seaver during a baseball game.
Yeah. Well, tense muscles are slow. You got to loosen up, and, I think it was Gil Patterson who was telling me a story on this show about he was with, I think, the Expos when Halladay had the highest ERA of any starter over 100 innings, and he got sent down. And then they said they changed his arm slot from a hot overhead to a 3/4. He said it went from 98 to 95. And he said then he worked with Dorfman, and he just worked on his mental skills, having focus, conviction, all the things that you'd have going on in your head when you're pitching. And then when he came back, he became the Hall of Fame pitcher we all know. What do you remember about that scenario with Halladay?
Well, again, it's conviction. A pitcher has to be convicted of what he's throwing. And he got it. And there's so many pitchers that went to get that mental help from Harvey, who was a genius. Just look at Al Leiter. I worked with Al. He can be nervous, but he's a really good pitcher. And there were other guys. Kevin Brown, believe it or not, people think, oh, he was just tough, macho. He needed Harvey Dorfman before he walked out the pitch every time. Kevin Brown, very close to being a Hall of Famer. He was a great pitcher, and it was really tough. But it's that conviction that you have to get, and it's some people just getting there, and the catcher is an important part. I'm sure we could come up with several people who had Harvey Dorfman and Brad Ausmus, and the result was really good pitcher who got after his 10th year in the big leagues got a few votes.
Yeah, because I even heard the story about Maddox had the same kind of thing when he sent down, and had to work through some things and came back with a different mental attitude and changed his whole game too.
Oh yeah.
I found with command, that mental focus and intent is critical for command. So it's kind of like a dual purpose thing to work on your mental skills for command as well as for other parts of your game pitching.
Well, part of it, um, for certain pitchers is everything is emphasized as to what the hitter can do. So you're supposed to try to miss bats. And people are so focused on the necessity of velocity to get outs easily. And just watch George
Yeah.
Kirby. He is sixth since the dead ball era in strikeout walk ratio. And he only throws 93 to 95. Well, it's one of
I
the
had
best
it.
pitching
I had
coaches.
his
And Gabe said to me, he has one of the five best fastballs in the game. It's just not about velocity. It's about command, movement, and
right.
I've had other pitching coaches say to me, that
I had his pitching coach. I had his pitching coach on here yesterday. Sean McGrath had him when he was in the Mariners 3 years, and
mhm.
we were talking about him, and he was saying that good pitchers make pitching coaches look good. I said, well, yeah, but I said you had the foresight to train him in command when others might have just trained him to throw harder.
Well, he was also lucky to go to Seattle. Fortunate
They got a great
because
system. Yeah.
and Jerry DiPoto really believes in the command part of it. And I remember seeing a game. I was watching a game that George pitched on Cape Cod League, and Scout said to me, um, "He's interesting, but boy, he doesn't throw hard enough." And he was 90 to 92. Kirby was. We're in the sixth inning, and it wasn't even an hour yet. He had one hitter, and that was a
Mhm.
bad hop. And I just, well, wait a minute. If they don't hit him, it's what does this mean? I mean, he's got a fastball. He moves all over the place. It moves like crazy, and
Commands it.
it's guys swinging. I mean, I'm this one of very smart pitcher coaches I know who has a staff of a lot of strikeout pitchers. Says he wishes that a lot of the hitters would make soft contact on 2-0 pitches rather than just swing and miss because you stay in the game. I mean, it's not about velocity. It's not about strikeouts. It's about how many innings are you throwing as a starting pitcher. How many times? And Rick Porcello, the year that he won the Cy Young Award, Rick was never. I mean, he was a very good pitcher, but his his credo was, if I'm not pitching in the seventh inning, I'm letting a lot of guys in the bullpen down and possibly jeopardizing their arms and their careers.
Right.
Now, Rick Porcello was one of the best teammates you could ever have, but at the same time, I always really impressed me. And I remember when a teammate would pitch a great game, he would just be, oh well, it's Eovaldi comes in out of the bullpen in Game 3 of the World Series in 2018 and goes whatever it was, 8 innings out of the bullpen. Finally gave up a home run. They didn't win, but the Red Sox won out of the bullpen. The next 3 games in the World Series was over in 5, and it was a historic performance in terms of what it meant for the Boston Red Sox and their history and beating the Dodgers in 5 games in the World Series. And it was also historic in that it made Eovaldi a folk hero forever in Boston until they let him go to Texas. And then it also left Porcello to, while talking about his teammate, to have tears in his eyes when he was talking about it, because it was such a gutsy performance.
Yeah.
And it he was throwing strikes. He's a
I got to
after those.
ask you. I got to ask you something. How on earth do you remember all of those details? You have some memory.
Well, there are things you want to remember. There are things you just don't forget. I
No,
mean,
but you're recalling details about games from so far back. It's like, how is he doing that?
well, I did in 2017. MLB Network wanted to do a special on the '67 Red Sox and the Impossible Dream. You can't do that without Yaz. Yaz had been in Fort Myers working with young players, and if he did one of those interviews, he was going to have to do about 10 of them. So he just didn't do any. And I didn't realize this. I called um, Pam Ken and asked her, I really want to see if I can get Yaz to talk about '67. She said, he knows you very well. I'll give you his number and tell him that. You call him. If I call him for you, he won't do it. So I called him. He called back in like 20 minutes. In the interview, he said it was going to be 25 minutes. We did it. He wanted to do it after the season started. So we did it in one of the places at Fenway. And he did it for an hour and a half. We went over other things in his career other than just that. Now,
Right.
those last few years of his career, I was covering them. There were the last 5 years of his career, I was his designated shagger. So if he wanted to go out early and hit, his good luck, I would be the shagger.
That's
And
pretty cool to be able to do that, though.
well, it was incredibly cool. But
Yeah.
he would come in and say, okay, this pitcher's going to do this, this, this. It's a little slop baller. It's going to try to throw breaking balls, hit me off the back foot. So play around towards the right field corner because I'll be pulling the balls when I'm out hitting. And he explained to me everything that was going to happen in the game. And a couple of years ago, he asked me, you never wrote about that. And I said, well, first of all, I'm not done writing yet. But you aren't playing. So I said, you would not have liked my talking about shagging for you. It just, you would have been polite, but you wouldn't have liked it. Probably would never have done it again. And I understood. Yes, I have great admiration for him, but it was amazing how he would. So he didn't watch video. He knew it all by memory. He remembered things like in '67, in early September, they were playing in Yankee Stadium. They were in the 10th or 11th inning. Al Donnelly had come in relief. And Carl said he always wanted to get me out with a fastball right about here. So we went back and forth through breaking balls. He was waiting for that moment. So I was basically hitting defensively. But then, we're at 3-2 in the 10th inning, and I'm saying I'm looking for that fastball up there. I could react and foul off most other pitches, and throw him a high fastball, and he hit it in the third deck. Red Sox went into first place, and he knew that. We had another one, a thing in Toronto where a young pitcher named Baylor Moore got him 0-2 with two good sliders. He was a left-hander. And then he threw two fastballs right behind his head. And next pitch was a nasty slider down the way. He has it off the top of the center field fence, tied the game to send it into extra innings because there were 2 men on. And so I kind of smiled while I was doing this interview. And he said, well, I mean, you like my answer. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you asked me. And I said, I thought it was the closest I ever came to death. And it was in the second paragraph of your story the next morning. So you must have liked the quote. And I just thought, this is unbelievable, his recall. It happened in 1978 when the Red Sox had blown the lead and now we're trying to come back. And the interview we were doing is in 2017. All those years in between, not only does remember exactly what happened on every pitch in that, but he remember what I wrote the second paragraph of my story the next day. Now that's a baseball player.
Yeah, but I noticed a lot of pitchers too. After you can go back and you say, well, in that second game, when the second pitch you threw to that third batter, what were you trying to do there? And they'll recall exactly what they threw and where and why and what happened. So I find a lot of pitchers have that good memory about what pitches they threw. You know.
Oh yeah, Bill Lee was at Fenway Park in September. Dusty Baker was there, and Bill wanted to talk to him about because the last home run hit off Bill Lee was by Dusty Baker. So
Wow.
But then I said, does it ever drive you crazy? You threw back you got the lead in game 7, and you threw back-to-back changeups to Tony Perez, and he hits a 3-run homer, the 2-run homer to make it 6-5. That was the biggest hit in the game. And he went, well, I'm still ticked off about that. And I said, why? He said, I told Darryl Johnson that I was out of gas after the 8th inning. And I just, after the 5th inning. And, I had to throw changeups to try to keep going. And I threw it to the wrong guy.
Well, also in the minor leagues in college, I always think that those kind of mistakes are important because you learn from them. So that if you're developing pitcher, you need to have those mistakes happen in games where you now, as you go up in the ranks, you can now become a better pitcher,
Yep.
So now I'm going to bring up a list of 9 things that I think are important for a pitcher. And if you would please pick your top 4, and I'm going to read them off real quick. The top 9 qualities I think are character, command, changing speeds, movement, max velocity, sequencing, reading batters, mental toughness, and know who you are.
Well, I think character and mental toughness kind of go together. So I'll make that will be one by itself.
All right.
I think changing speeds is extremely important. I think movement is I'll go to the end there. You have to know who you are. I mean, you can't be pitching like, geez, I want to pitch like Greg Max. If you're not Greg Max, if you're George Kirby, you don't pitch like Greg Max.
Right. That's a big one.
Although I will say this, in the last start of the year, the day after Tim Wakefield died, he started out a very important game by throwing a knuckleball. And I think reading batters is terribly important. We talked about that, but I'm a great believer in that.
So what would it be? It would be character, changing speeds, know who you are, and reading batters?
Yes.
And so what I'm going to do is post these later because now we're at, I think, 20 shows. And so I've been keeping track of what everyone answers. And then I'll kind of post, so everyone sees what other people, what people thought were important. It's funny, though, max velocity has really come up in the top 4.
Depends on someone's max velocity. Somebody's max velocity might be 93, but it has great movement or is very tough to pick up because and the arm slot is so important. I mean, that's part of knowing who you are. You're not an over the top pitcher. You're a low 3/4, and you get great movement with that, and you can your fastball is it's the equivalent of a 96, but it happens to be 92, 93.
Yeah. We've heard that a lot. Yeah. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh,
This
it's
has been
great
a great
fun.
discussion.
It's
And
great fun.
yeah, anyone who is a friend of Emo is a friend of mine, and
He's tremendous.
He's awesome, isn't he? All right. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Okay.
Don't forget to hit subscribe to get notified when new episodes are released. Pitching Command Show, brought to you by Command Trakker, the smart target that MLB and D1 teams rely upon to measure and train command. Many throw hard, but few command. Visit commandtrakker.com.